The Lantern Makers of Moonhaven, read by Chuck Brown. In a quiet valley where the hills rolled gently like sleeping giants and a silver stream wound its way between ancient oak trees, there stood a village called Moonhaven. The village got its name because every night, when darkness fell across the land, the entire valley would glow with the warm light of hundreds of magical lanterns that hung from every window, doorway, and tree branch. These weren't ordinary lanterns that burned oil or candles. They were dream lanterns, created by two very special craftspeople who lived in a workshop at the heart of the village. Their names were Ember and Glow, and they had the most wonderful gift. They could capture feelings and memories and hopes and turn them into light that would shine gently through the darkness. Ember was 11 years old, with auburn hair that seemed to flicker like flames when she moved, and warm brown eyes that sparkled with creativity. She wore an apron covered in tiny pockets, each one holding different materials she used for making lanterns: bits of colored glass, thin wires that bent like flower stems, and small tools that looked like they had been made by fairy craftsmen. Glow was 10 years old, with pale blonde hair that seemed to shimmer with its own soft light, and gentle blue eyes that could see the beauty in anything. He wore a vest with many small loops and holders for the brushes and bottles he used to mix the special paints that made the lanterns glow with their magical light. The two friends had discovered their gift quite by accident the previous winter, when Ember's grandmother had fallen ill and couldn't sleep because of bad dreams. Ember had wanted desperately to help, so she had tried to make a special lantern that would chase away nightmares and bring peaceful sleep. She had worked for hours, carefully shaping metal and glass, while Glow had mixed paints that seemed to glow with their own inner warmth. When they finally lit the lantern and placed it by grandmother's bedside, something magical had happened. The lantern didn't just give off light, it filled the room with the most wonderful feeling of peace and comfort. Grandmother had slept better that night than she had in weeks, and when she woke up, she told them about the most beautiful dreams of gardens full of flowers and warm summer days. Word of the magical lantern had spread quickly through Moonhaven, and soon other people were asking if Ember and Glow could make special lanterns for them too. A mother wanted a lantern that would help her baby sleep through the night. A farmer needed one that would bring him dreams of good harvests. An old man asked for a lantern that would help him remember happy times with his wife who had passed away. Each lantern that Ember and Glow created was completely unique, designed specifically for the person who would use it. Ember would craft the physical structure, the frame, the glass panels, the delicate metalwork that held everything together. She had an amazing ability to know exactly what shape and size each lantern should be, and how to arrange the glass and metal so that the light would shine in just the right way. Glow would create the magical part, the special paints and powders that made each lantern glow with its own particular kind of light. He could mix colors that didn't exist anywhere else in the world, shades that seemed to be made of captured starlight or bottled sunshine, or the green glow of fireflies on a summer evening. Tonight was a very special night in Moonhaven, because tomorrow was the Festival of Lights, a celebration that happened once a year when the whole village would display their most beautiful lanterns and share stories about the dreams and hopes that the lights represented. Ember and Glow had been working for weeks to create a very special lantern that would be the centerpiece of the festival. But there was a problem. Earlier that day, a messenger had arrived with troubling news from the neighboring village of Shadowdale. For the past month, the people there had been having trouble sleeping. They were plagued by nightmares and restless nights, and nothing they tried seemed to help. The village elder had heard about the dream lanterns of Moonhaven and was asking if Ember and Glow might be able to help. "We have to do something," said Ember, as she and Glow sat in their workshop, surrounded by half-finished lanterns and jars of glowing paint. "A whole village of people who can't sleep peacefully. That's terrible." "But the Festival of Lights is tomorrow," said Glow. "We've promised everyone in Moonhaven that we'd have the centerpiece lantern ready, and we've been working on it for weeks." They looked at the lantern they had been creating for the festival. It was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever made, a large, elaborate creation with panels of glass in every color imaginable, and metalwork so delicate it looked like it had been made from spider webs and moonbeams. When lit, it would create the most amazing display of colored light, and Glow had mixed special paints that would make the colors dance and swirl like living things. "What if," said Ember slowly, "we could find a way to help both villages? What if we could create something that would bring light and hope to Shadowdale, but also make our own festival even more special?" Glow's eyes lit up with an idea. "What if we take our festival lantern to Shadowdale? We could use it to help drive away their nightmares, and then bring it back for our own celebration." "That's a wonderful idea," said Ember, "but I think we need to do more than that. One lantern, even a very special one, might not be enough to help a whole village that's been having trouble for a month." They spent the next hour discussing different possibilities. They could make dozens of small lanterns and take them to Shadowdale. They could try to teach the people there how to make their own dream lanterns. Or they could create something completely new, a kind of lantern that had never been made before. Finally, Glow had an inspiration. "What if we made a mother lantern? A big, powerful lantern that could share its light and magic with smaller lanterns, so that one special light could spread throughout an entire village." Ember's eyes grew wide with excitement. "That's brilliant! We could take our festival lantern and modify it so that it can kindle other lanterns with its magic. Then we could help the people of Shadowdale make their own dream lanterns that would all be connected to the mother lantern." They worked through the night, carefully modifying their beautiful festival lantern. Ember added special features to the metalwork, small openings where other lanterns could be held close to absorb some of the magical light. Glow mixed new paints with properties he had never tried before, colors that could transfer their magic to other paints, creating a network of connected lights. As dawn broke over Moonhaven, Ember and Glow carefully packed their modified festival lantern and all the supplies they would need to help the people of Shadowdale make their own dream lanterns. The lantern was too precious to risk on the bumpy roads, so they padded it with soft cloths and secured it in a special cart that Ember's father had built with springs to absorb any shocks. The journey to Shadowdale took most of the morning. As they traveled, they could see the difference between their own cheerful valley and the troubled village they were approaching. Moonhaven had been bright and lovely, with people working in their gardens and children playing in the streets. But as they got closer to Shadowdale, everything seemed darker and more subdued. People moved slowly, as if they were tired, and there was a general feeling of gloom hanging over the entire area. When they arrived in Shadowdale's main square, they were met by the village elder, a kind-faced woman named Mayor Starling. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. "Thank you for coming," said Mayor Starling. "We've heard amazing things about your dream lanterns. We're hoping you might be able to help us. Nobody in our village has had a good night's sleep in weeks. We've tried everything we can think of, but nothing seems to work." Ember and Glow looked around the village square and immediately noticed something important. Unlike Moonhaven, which was always decorated with lanterns and lights, Shadowdale had no lanterns at all. The windows were dark, the doorways were unlit, and even in the daytime, the village felt dim and shadowy. "I think we know what the problem might be," said Glow gently. "Your village doesn't have any lights to guide good dreams and keep nightmares away. Dreams need light to find their way to sleeping people." "We used to have lanterns," said Mayor Starling sadly. "Beautiful ones that our own craftspeople made. But they were destroyed in a terrible storm last month, and we haven't been able to replace them. None of us knows how to make the kind of lanterns that bring peaceful sleep." "Well," said Ember with a smile, "that's exactly what we're here to teach you." They spent the rest of the day working with the people of Shadowdale, teaching them the basics of lantern making. Ember showed them how to shape metal frames and cut glass panels, while Glow demonstrated how to mix paints that would glow with gentle, soothing light. But the most important part was teaching them how to put their own hopes and dreams into the lanterns they were creating. Each person was encouraged to think about their happiest memories, their most peaceful moments, and their hopes for sweet dreams while they worked on their lantern. As the sun began to set, they were ready for the most important part of their plan. Ember and Glow carefully unpacked their mother lantern and placed it in the center of the village square. Even before it was lit, the beautiful lantern drew gasps of admiration from the gathered villagers. "This lantern contains the combined hopes and dreams of our entire village," Ember explained. "When we light it, it will share that magic with all the lanterns you've made today." Glow struck a special match that burned with blue flame and carefully lit the mother lantern. Immediately, the most beautiful light began to glow from within the colored glass panels. The light was warm and welcoming, and it seemed to pulse gently, like a slowly beating heart. One by one, the people of Shadowdale brought their newly made lanterns close to the mother lantern. As each small lantern touched the larger one, something magical happened. The light from the mother lantern flowed into the smaller lanterns, kindling them with the same peaceful, dream-bringing glow. Soon the entire village square was filled with the warm light of dozens of dream lanterns, each one glowing with its own special magic, but all connected to the central mother lantern. The villagers hung their lanterns in windows, doorways, and from tree branches, and for the first time in a month, Shadowdale was filled with gentle, welcoming light. As full darkness fell, something wonderful began to happen. The people of Shadowdale, who had been tired and worried, began to smile and relax. Children who had been cranky and fussy started to yawn and rub their eyes, ready for sleep. Adults who had been dreading bedtime began to look forward to rest. "I can feel it already," said Mayor Starling, looking around at her transformed village. "There's something different in the air, something peaceful and hopeful." That night, for the first time in weeks, everyone in Shadowdale slept deeply and peacefully. They had wonderful dreams of sunny meadows and gentle streams, of loved ones and happy memories, of hopes coming true and fears fading away. Early the next morning, Ember and Glow carefully packed up their mother lantern and prepared to return to Moonhaven for their own Festival of Lights. But they left behind something even more valuable than the lantern. They left the knowledge and skills that would allow the people of Shadowdale to make more dream lanterns whenever they needed them. When they arrived back in Moonhaven, the entire village was waiting to welcome them home. Word had somehow spread about their mission to help Shadowdale, and everyone wanted to hear about their adventure. That evening, the Festival of Lights in Moonhaven was more beautiful than it had ever been before. The mother lantern, glowing with the satisfaction of having helped an entire village, created the most spectacular display of colored light anyone had ever seen. But even more wonderful was the knowledge that their festival lantern had done more than just create beauty. It had brought hope and peaceful sleep to people who desperately needed it. As the festival continued late into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling under the glow of hundreds of dream lanterns, Ember and Glow felt a deep satisfaction. They had learned something important about their gift, that the most magical lanterns weren't just the ones that looked beautiful, but the ones that brought light and hope to people who needed it most. And from that night forward, the two villages were connected by more than just the road that ran between them. They were connected by the shared magic of the dream lanterns, and by the knowledge that sometimes the most beautiful light comes from helping others find their way out of darkness. But the story of Ember and Glow's adventure was far from over. 3 days after the Festival of Lights, as they were working in their workshop and enjoying the peaceful routine of creating new lanterns for the people of Moonhaven, they received an unexpected visitor. A young girl about their own age appeared at the workshop door just as the afternoon sun was beginning to fade. She had long, dark hair and wore traveling clothes that were dusty from a long journey. But what caught their attention immediately was the small, flickering lantern she carried. It was clearly one of their designs, but the light inside was weak and unsteady, as if it was struggling to stay lit. "Please," said the girl, whose name was Dawn, "I need your help. I'm from a village called Bright Hollow, 3 days' journey from here. We heard about what you did for Shadowdale, and we're hoping you might be able to help us, too." Ember and Glow invited Dawn into their workshop and offered her some warm tea and fresh bread while she told them her story. As she spoke, they could see that she was exhausted from her long journey, but her eyes were bright with determination and hope. "Our village used to be the happiest place in the world," Dawn explained. "We had a tradition that went back hundreds of years. Every family had a special lantern that was passed down from parents to children, generation after generation. These weren't just ordinary lanterns, they were ancestor lanterns, and they glowed with the love and wisdom of all the people who had owned them before." She paused to sip her tea, and Ember and Glow could see tears forming in her eyes. "But 6 months ago, something terrible happened. A group of thieves came to our village in the middle of the night and stole all of our ancestor lanterns. They took them away in wagons, and we never saw them again. Without the lanterns, our village has become a sad, dark place. People have forgotten how to be happy. Children don't laugh anymore, and everyone feels like they've lost something precious that can never be replaced." Glow leaned forward with interest. "What makes ancestor lanterns different from other lanterns?" "Each one contained the memories and love of all the people who had owned it," Dawn said. "When you looked into an ancestor lantern, you could see stories of your grandparents and great-grandparents. You could feel the love they had for their families and the wisdom they had gained through their lives. The lanterns helped us remember who we were and where we came from." Ember frowned thoughtfully. "That's terrible that they were stolen. But couldn't you make new ones?" Dawn shook her head sadly. "We tried, but we don't know how. The knowledge of how to create ancestor lanterns was lost long ago. We only knew how to keep the old ones burning and pass them down to our children. Now we have nothing but empty holders and broken hearts." Ember and Glow looked at each other, and they both knew what they had to do. "We'll help you," said Ember without hesitation. "We can't bring back your original ancestor lanterns, but maybe we can help you create new ones that will be just as special." "But how?" asked Dawn. "The memories and love that were in our old lanterns took hundreds of years to accumulate. How can you recreate something like that?" Glow had been thinking about this problem, and suddenly his face lit up with an idea. "What if we don't try to create the old lanterns? What if we help your village create brand new ancestor lanterns that will start their own traditions? Every family could begin fresh, putting their own love and memories into new lanterns that their children and grandchildren will treasure. Dawn's eyes widened with hope. Do you really think that would work? I think, said Ember, that the most important thing about an ancestor lantern isn't how old it is, but how much love goes into it. If the families in your village put their hearts into creating new lanterns, those lanterns will be just as special as the old ones, maybe even more special, because they'll be made with hope for the future instead of just memories of the past. They spent the rest of the evening planning their journey to Bright Hollow. This would be a bigger challenge than helping Shadowdale, because they weren't just dealing with people who couldn't sleep. They were trying to help a whole village remember how to be happy again. Ember and Glow packed their supplies carefully, including several special lanterns they had been working on, and all the materials they would need to teach an entire village how to create their own ancestor lanterns. They also brought their mother lantern, thinking that its magic might be helpful in kindling the new tradition in Bright Hollow. The journey to Bright Hollow took 3 days, just as Dawn had said. As they traveled, Dawn told them more stories about her village and the traditions that had been lost when the lanterns were stolen. She described festivals where hundreds of ancestor lanterns would be lit at once, creating a river of light that flowed through the village streets. She told them about quiet family evenings when children would sit with their grandparents and listen to stories while gazing into the warm glow of their family's lantern. When they finally arrived in Bright Hollow, Ember and Glow were shocked by what they saw. Dawn had been right. The village was one of the saddest places they had ever seen. The buildings were well maintained and the streets were clean, but there was no joy anywhere. People walked slowly with their heads down. Children played quietly without laughter, and everything felt gray and lifeless, even though the sun was shining brightly. The village elder, a man named Master Oak, welcomed them with gratitude, but little hope. "We appreciate you coming," he said wearily, "but I'm not sure anything can bring back what we've lost. Those lanterns weren't just objects. They were the heart and soul of our community." "We understand," said Ember gently, "but we'd like to try something. We believe that the heart and soul of your community isn't really lost, it's just sleeping, waiting for new light to wake it up." They began by gathering the entire village in the central square. Ember and Glow had brought one of their most beautiful lanterns, not the mother lantern, but a special creation they called a memory lantern. This lantern had the unique property of being able to capture and display memories when people shared them aloud. "We want everyone to share a happy memory," Ember announced to the gathered crowd. "It can be anything. A special moment with your family, a beautiful day, a time when you felt proud or loved or peaceful. As you share your memory, the lantern will capture it and add it to the light inside." At first, people were hesitant. They had been sad for so long that it was hard to remember how to share joy. But gradually, one by one, villagers began to speak. An elderly woman shared a memory of dancing with her husband on their wedding day 50 years ago. A middle-aged man talked about the day his daughter was born. A young mother described the first time her son said, "Mama." Children shared memories of playing in the summer sunshine and building snow forts in winter. As each memory was shared, something amazing happened. The memory lantern began to glow brighter and brighter, and swirls of colored light appeared inside the glass. Gold for joyful memories, silver for peaceful ones, warm red for memories of love, and soft green for memories of hope. But more importantly, as people shared their memories, they began to smile. They began to remember what it felt like to be happy. children started to giggle. Adults began to stand straighter. The whole atmosphere of the village began to change. "You see," said Glow, as the memory lantern pulsed with the warm light of dozens of shared memories, "your joy isn't lost. It was just waiting for the right moment to shine again." Over the next several days, Ember and Glow worked with every family in Bright Hollow to create their own new ancestor lanterns. But these weren't copies of the old lanterns. They were completely new creations that would start their own traditions. Each family was encouraged to design their lantern in a way that reflected their own story and values. The baker's family created a lantern shaped like a loaf of bread, with golden glass that glowed like a warm oven. The teacher's family made a lantern that looked like an open book, with pages of frosted glass that seemed to flutter in the light. The blacksmith's family crafted a sturdy lantern from iron and copper that glowed with the warm light of a forge. But the most important part wasn't the physical creation of the lanterns. It was the process of filling them with new memories and new love. Each family spent time together sharing stories, talking about their hopes for the future, and putting their dreams and wishes into the lantern they were creating. Ember taught them special techniques for working with metal and glass, while Glow showed them how to mix paints that would hold memories and emotions. But most of the magic came from the families themselves, as they rediscovered the joy of working together on something meaningful. On the final night of their stay in Bright Hollow, the village held a ceremony to light all the new ancestor lanterns for the first time. As the sun set and darkness fell, families began to kindle their lanterns one by one, using flame from the memory lantern that still glowed with all the shared memories from that first gathering. The effect was magical. As each new ancestor lantern was lit, it began to glow with its own unique light, some warm and golden, others cool and silver, each one reflecting the personality and love of the family who had created it. Soon the entire village was filled with the gentle, warm glow of dozens of new lanterns, and Bright Hollow looked more beautiful than it ever had before. But the most wonderful change was in the people themselves. The sadness and despair that had hung over the village for months was gone, replaced by hope and joy and a sense of new beginnings. Children were laughing again, adults were smiling, and everyone was talking excitedly about the traditions they would create with their new lanterns. "These lanterns will be even more special than our old ones," said Master Oak, tears of joy streaming down his face, "because we created them together with our own hands and our own hearts. Our children and grandchildren will treasure them, not just because they're beautiful, but because they represent the time when our village learned to hope again." As Ember and Glow prepared to return to Moonhaven, they left behind more than just the knowledge of lantern making. They left behind a village that had rediscovered its own strength and resilience, and had learned that sometimes losing something precious can lead to creating something even more meaningful. The journey home was filled with quiet satisfaction. They had helped two villages in completely different ways. Shadowdale had needed practical help with sleep and nightmares, while Bright Hollow had needed to heal from loss and rediscover joy. But in both cases, the solution had been the same: bringing people together to create something beautiful with their own hands and hearts. Every year after that, the Festival of Lights in Moonhaven became a celebration shared by all three villages, with lanterns that told the story of how two young craftspeople had learned that the greatest magic of all was the magic of kindness, creativity, and the willingness to share your gifts with others who needed them. And in their workshop in Moonhaven, Ember and Glow continued to create dream lanterns for anyone who needed them, knowing that each light they kindled had the power to chase away darkness and bring hope to even the gloomiest corners of the world. The end.